Sometimes the entire course of history can just pivot on a single event, a few days of fighting that redraw the map of the world for centuries. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. The Battle of al-Qadisiyyah, fought way back in 636.
I mean, that's a huge question, right? But it's precisely what happened here. You had this established superpower, the Sasanian Persian Empire, going up against a new rising force, the Rashidun Caliphate. What happened over just 4 days didn't just decide a battle, it basically sealed the fate of one empire and kicked off the absolutely explosive rise of another.
All right, so let's try to picture the scene. It's November of 636, on a plain in what is now Iraq. You've got these two massive armies just staring each other down. On one side, the full might of Persia, this ancient, storied empire. And on the other, a highly motivated, incredibly mobile army sweeping out of Arabia. Literally everything was on the line.
So to really get a grip on this battle, we first have to understand who these two forces were that were about to collide. And they were, in almost every way, polar opposites.
Yeah, you can see the David versus Goliath thing happening right away. The Rashidun Caliphate under Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas brought around 30,000 men. The Sasanian Empire, led by their veteran General Rostam Farrokhzad, had nearly double that, plus their terrifying war elephants. On paper, this looks like an easy win for Persia, but as we're about to see, the numbers, they don't even begin to tell the whole story.
So the big question is, why wasn't it an easy win for the superpower? Well, because while the Sasanian Empire looked, huge and formidable on the outside, it was basically rotting from the inside out. It was shockingly fragile. So get this, for more than 20 years, the Sasanians had been fighting this brutal, incredibly expensive war against their main rival, the Byzantine Empire. It drained their treasury, it drained their manpower. The whole empire was just exhausted, and its military, well, it was a shadow of its former self. And then there was the internal chaos. I mean, just look at this. In just 4 years, the throne was like a revolving door. You've got assassinations, you've got murders, you've got full-blown civil war. So by the time we get to the battle, who's the emperor? An 8-year-old boy. The real power was with the generals, sure, but the central government was just incredibly, incredibly weak. Okay, so now let's flip the coin and look at the other side. Because while the Sasanians were busy imploding, this new power was just exploding out of Arabia with unbelievable speed and motivation. See, just a few years before our battle, the legendary general Khalid ibn al-Walid had basically torn through Sasanian Iraq, winning one stunning victory after another. He proved that the Rashidun army, even though it was smaller, was lightning fast, super adaptable, and just devastatingly effective. Okay, now this is a really crucial piece of the puzzle, so pay attention. The Sasanians and their old rivals, the Byzantines, had actually cooked up a plan to crush the caliphate with a classic pincer move. But, oh boy, did that plan backfire. The caliphate absolutely shattered the Byzantine army at the Battle of Yarmouk. And this victory was huge because it freed up thousands of their absolute best, most experienced troops to head straight for the Persian front. All right, so the stage is set. Let's dive into the battle itself. And this wasn't just a single clash, It was this brutal 4-day slugfest with the momentum swinging back and forth like crazy. So, day 1. It was fittingly called the Day of Disorder, and it was all about the Sasanians' ultimate weapon. So Rostam unleashes his secret weapon, the elephant corps. I mean, just try to imagine being an Arab warrior who has never seen an elephant before. It must have been terrifying. These living tanks are just smashing through the Rashidun lines. Horses are bolting in a total panic, and the right flank just starts to collapse. For a minute there, it really looked like the battle was already over. But then the Rashidun commander, Sa'd, comes up with this brilliant counter tactic right there on the fly. He tells his archers, hey, don't target the elephants, target the riders. And at the same time, he sends infantry to sneak in close and cut the straps, the girths, holding the elephant saddles. And you know what? It worked. It worked perfectly. The riderless, panicked elephants were pulled back, and the line somehow held. So we head into day 2, and this is where the tide really starts to turn. And it all came down to the timely arrival of reinforcements and some incredibly clever psychological warfare. First, you've got those 5,000 veterans from Yarmouk finally showing up.
But their commander, a guy named al-Qadisiyyah, was brilliant. Instead of having them all show up at once, he divides them into these small waves, one after another. So to the Persians, it looks like this massive, never-ending army is just pouring onto the battlefield. But then, he does something even weirder. He has his men disguise their camels to look like strange monsters. I know, it sounds bizarre, right? But it worked. It totally spooked the Sasanian horses and threw their cavalry into chaos. Day 3. This is where things just descend into a brutal, grinding battle of attrition that lasts all the way through the night. In fact, the Muslim chronicles call it the night of rumbling noises, because the sounds of battle literally never stopped. And the goal on this day was simple, but brutal. Eliminate the elephant threat for good. So you have Rashidun warriors just swarming these massive beasts, blinding them, even cutting off their trunks. It was savage. The wounded, terrified elephants stampeded back, right through their own lines, creating absolute, total chaos. By morning, the Sasanians' greatest weapon was completely off the board.
So it's sunrise on day 4. You can imagine everyone is just completely exhausted. But the Rashidun commander, al-Qadisiyyah, he sees his chance. He can just tell the enemy is about to break. So he rallies his men for one last decisive push, shouting this.
And that final push, it was all it took. The Sasanian army completely collapsed the moment their commander, Rostam, was killed. But here's the thing. It's a bit of a mystery. Nobody knows exactly how he died. Was he killed in single combat during a sudden sandstorm, or was his body just found among the dead later? We honestly don't know for sure. But what we do know is that with their leader gone, the Sasanian army just panicked and fled. And just like that, the battle was over. The consequences, they were immediate. They were absolute, and they would change the world forever.
I mean, the shift in power was just staggering. Think about it. Before the battle, the Sasanians held Mesopotamia, the very heart of their empire. After the battle, their main army was gone, completely shattered. The road to the imperial capital was now wide open. And that capital was Ctesiphon, one of the wealthiest cities in the entire world. And sure enough, just 2 months after their victory at al-Qadisiyyah, the Rashidun army laid siege to it. And it fell. The capture of their capital was the fatal blow. It was the one from which the Sasanian Empire would simply never recover. You know, the Battle of al-Qadisiyyah is just such a stark reminder of how a few key moments, a clever tactic, a timely reinforcement, the death of a single leader, can literally alter the entire trajectory of civilizations. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if the scales had tipped just slightly the other way? What if the elephants hadn't faltered? What if that storm had broken differently? How different would our world actually look today?